Hi everyone, it's Shari Carroll here with a really quick look into the new release from Simon Says Stamp called Better Together. This release is really fun. It has stamps and dies that are like two parts where you're going to put things together. The card I've made for this tutorial uses the Make a Home stamps and Home Building, which are the coordinating dies for the set. I've used a lot of light tones of watercolor using my Tim Holtz Distress markers. I've also die cut a tag shape out of fog cardstock as a window, and I've used the tiny hearts and some texture paste for the background. I'm starting off with the Make a Home stamp set, and I've stamped some of the basic shapes to build a house. So I have the house shape, a door, the window, the roof, and I've also stamped and die cut a few extra windows just in case. And I've stamped these onto watercolor cardstock using archival black ink. And to cut these out, I've used the Home Building dies. For my watercoloring, I have chosen 3 browns, and these are Vintage Photo, Gathered Twigs, and Walnut Stain. And what I'll be doing is just scribbling these onto an acrylic block. I like to use the acrylic block as my palette because I can see my color and I know when to add more. I'm using a fairly small tip paintbrush and I'm just dipping it into the water. Then I'll go ahead and pick up some color, and what I'm doing on my little roof line is I'm just painting little circles and I'm alternating the color, and I'm just going to go ahead and fill it in. Once I get going and once it dries, I'm going to go back in and add more color as needed, but you can just see up close here just little tiny circles, so it kind of looks like round shingles. At this point I have my painting done, and see if my camera can focus, and you can see the circles. I've also painted in some brick using pumice stone and also the siding, and I've glued these pieces together using some glossy accents. Then I've painted my door and window with the same colors, and I've also added some foam squares to the back so that I can put this onto my card. I've stamped my greeting onto some white Nina cardstock, and I've used Sparrow ink, and I've also used the die that comes from the Thanksgiving Feast die set. And then for my tree, I have stamped the tree trunk with the Sparrow ink, and then the background leaves I've used the Fossil ink, and then I've also stamped my bird using the khaki ink. I've also stamped the heart from the set, and I've used the Sparrow ink for that, and I've used all the coordinating dies for all these pieces. I'm using foam squares on my heart, and I've also popped up the door for my house. Next, I've used the large dies, and I have a panel of fog cardstock here, and I've used this shape of the die. So I've just cut a window into that fog panel, and that will sit onto a top folding Nina White card. I have also used the Tiny Heart stencil and some of my texture paste, and I've created a little panel that will sit behind the window. And to finish things off, I have assembled everything. I've used a few sequins from the Simon Says Stamp Moonshine set, and also a little twine bow at the top of the frame. I hope I've given you some inspiration on using some of the product from the Simon Says Stamp Better Together release. Thanks for watching.